So, I applaud you all for that. It's really important, and it's good legal practice as well.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. So we're going to get started. We're going to get into part one, which is your team. And again, we welcome questions. Some of this may be a little basic, but again, it's really important to start and have a foundation, which we feel this is. So first person that you're going to want on your team is you, right? And you're going to need to sit down and say, do I really want to do this? You could read all kinds of psychology books, and you can read all kinds of books about the psyche and mental state. But it's really, if you want to do this, you want to kind of give yourself the confidence that you can do it. And I'll give you all the confidence in the world by saying that you can do it. It's not difficult. Does it take time? Yes. Does it take work? Yes. Does it take effort? Yes. Is there a lot of information out there that's overwhelming? Heck yes. So when you look at this stuff, put yourself, get out of a nice legal pad or however you take notes, go outside, have a cup of coffee, nice day, and just think about like what you want to put together to get this going. Obviously, you need money, right? You need to kind of understand where to go to find the information. So you've got book smarts. You got people that have written books about passive real estate investment all day long. Robert Kiyosaki, if you don't have the 3 Rich Dad books, please go get them if you want to do this. Robert is tried, tested, and proven. He's not a guru. He started as a Marine Corps helicopter pilot, hoorah, Mike, and he knows his stuff. And he's kind of got that same mentality that he wants to share. So definitely get those Rich Dad books. There's other great books out there too. Grant Cardone's got some great books. Michael Blank's got some great books.
And permit me to add, John, Brian Burke's got a hands-off guide to investors, probably the single best for passive investors, by the way, for multifamily, at least. And the same principles apply to other.
Yeah, and again, we could help you guys all with that offline if you want. And there's great podcasts. Doug has a podcast. Andrew Rosenberg on the call has got a podcast. There's different types of groups you can go to that meet weekly. If you're on LinkedIn, you can look up and see who's running weekly meetup groups where you can go and you can learn from people and you can talk to people, and there's breakout rooms where you can kind of get information. So Doug's providing some stuff in the chat, but start with what is the best way for you to learn. And however you learned your trait in life or your education in life, use that to your benefit to learn about this. Some folks dive in, write the books. Some folks don't like to read too much, so they'll listen on audiobooks. But just kind of come up with that initial plan on how you want to do this. And you can go online and start pulling stuff off of magazines, reports, and just start putting together some files, right, on your computer or in a journal, and put together some checklists on how you want to attack this. And that's very important because it's going to give you the confidence to know that you can do it. And it's going to give you the confidence to know that it's possible to do this. So you got to believe in yourself. You got to give yourself a lot of credit. Tell yourself you can do it. And, that's probably the first thing I can think of. And that's why it's on there. So Doug, Dave, anyone else questions or anything in particular?
I would also add, to lower the psychological barrier, don't feel like you have to go all in on something. Try smaller amounts maybe to test the waters and get, look for a smaller offering perhaps that you can test the waters with. I think that psychologically will make it a little bit easier to transition into the space instead of going all in. And in fact, I wouldn't even recommend that with any one sponsor. Going all in is probably not a great bet until you're really you have to be mega confident with tons of years of experience and just diversification wise, maybe not even wise to do that. But and a lot of advice I've heard from a lot of LPs that were really successful and helped them make the transition was choose a smaller amount with a project you like and just kind of get your feet wet that way.
Yeah, and that's a good point. LP, by the way, is a limited partner. So that's what folks are coins who are investing in passive real estate investment. They'll be considered an LP, limited partner. And we'll talk more about that as we get through these different parts. The other thing is, hey, are there people in your family that are doing this? Those people would probably be more than happy to talk to you more about how they do it. I'm sure everybody invests in the market. I know a lot of folks know how the market works. So those same techniques that you have, those same strategies that you have for that would be beneficial. Who likes to play Monopoly? I do. I love to play Monopoly. That's another good way. You come up with your plan on how you're going to buy properties. You don't buy well, maybe you do buy every property right away, but if you run into getting in jail or whatever, get into that mindset. Have fun doing it. Pretend you maybe have $1 million. What are the types of investments you want to get into? Do you want to get into maybe alternative investments in energy, some Bitcoin, maybe put some in cash, draw out a pie chart. Maybe you kind of get an idea of how to do that. So you start with you and give yourself and the confidence and courage that you can do it. So that's very important, and it's a good starting point. The next subsection is mentors, and I kind of alluded to that a bit. Having a family member, having a good friend, having somebody that does this, that you could say, hey, could we maybe spend an hour a week or 2 hours a week if you don't mind? And I can tell you 99% of the time, your friends are going to do it. They're not going to charge you any money for it because they want to share, I believe, good things with you from what they've learned. So find yourself a mentor. It should actually be mentors. Have multiple mentors, just like you do in business, or you're starting a new project, or you're getting into a new role and a new career path. You want to kind of look to those subject matter experts to look up to and ask. And if you want to get a little more active, see who the developers are in your area. Maybe you can hook up with a developer who's doing a multifamily project. Hey, can I kind of just shadow you and look at what you do and take notes? And that's a free education right there. So definitely get yourself some mentors. Doug, do you have an example of maybe a good mentor you have, or Dave, or anyone in general that would want to add to that and how important that is?
Well, I will say that's one large reason why I partnered with Andy. For example, I've never done investing on the GP or LP side. I've all had W-2 or legal experience. So having someone who's been in that space is why I value Andy so much. He's been in the passive investing world for a long time. So Andy, and I'll put a name out here, Joel Giuliacci. I hope he doesn't mind me dropping his name. Famous for networking with other LPs and sharing advice. And if you just and I think this is where the networking piece comes into play. I would recommend, if you're looking forward to being an LP, touch base with me. I have a calendar of events where you can start networking with other LPs and GPs in the same context. They're all typically in the same room. This is where the networking can also help you very much in finding, say, hey, you meet someone who's an LP already. And I will say that this is one of the reasons why I love, and Daniel, I'm sure you'll appreciate this comment. The legal business is a little less collegial than the real estate business, or maybe a lot less. And typically people love this business so much, or having so much fun and enjoy it so much, they're much more willing to share input and data. And it is a very collegial attitude toward other investors and LPs. And so I think 9 times out of 10, don't be afraid to make the ask, because 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh my God, yes, please, let's talk about real estate some more. Because most people in this business eat it, breathe it, sleep it, think about it when they're not asleep. When they're sleeping, they're dreaming it. So.
Yeah, it's a good point, Doug. I think too, with mentors, a lot of times mentors are going to give you some great information about what to avoid, some of the experiences they had. They're going to want to share that, and that's a wealth of information. Those are nuggets that you want to put in your back pocket. But mentors are really important. I know when I started our business 10 years ago, my mentor was my financial advisor, and I said, I've got this idea. I invested passively for 10 years, and I loved it. I want to start a business where I can do that and offer what I gained and loved as a passive investor. And right away, he told me about different people that I need to talk to, and talk to this person that we know together. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He knows that. The next thing you know, I mean, we've got a business. I've got the right people in place, but it took the courage to ask for help. So don't be afraid to ask for help, especially those that've got that experience. So that's really important. Next on deck is obviously a strategy, right? I mean, you want to just jump in and you don't want to just start investing. You may want to start building a little more of that knowledge, going through the process, putting together a strategy. For the military folks in the world, we've got the strategic, operational, and tactical level strategy. Put together those strategies that you kind of hold yourself accountable. Hey, I'm going to read 3 chapters of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad book this week. Hey, I'm going to invite 4 of my friends over on Saturday because it's going to rain, and we're going to play Monopoly. Hey, I'm going to listen to a podcast on Bigger Pockets every day this week when I'm driving in the car to work, because it takes me a half hour to get to work, or an hour to work. So these are things that you do that, you put on your calendar, you hold yourself accountable. those are your strategies, right? If anybody hasn't read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, recommend it immensely. 1% improvement every day. If you have a 1% improvement every day, what's the percentage at the end of the year? 365% improvement. So each day, just make an improvement towards that goal of getting smarter in this. Okay, so that's important too. We don't have one with us today, but obviously a lot of folks have certified financial planners. That's definitely someone you're going to want to have in your team, whether you're investing in stocks or IRAs, mutual funds, insurance. You know, that CFP is obviously going to give you the education from what's available in the public domain, but it's also, a lot of them do know about these private offerings. Some of them can't really talk specifically about it because they're under strict compliance with FINRA and a lot of obligations from the law side that Dan could probably speak to. But you know, your CFP could still point you in the right direction. Hey, I want to learn a little bit more about this. What do you think? And that's, again, you could pair that person up as your mentor as well. That could be another person there on your team, and we recommend that. Registered investment advisor is, and Mike Torrey is going to jump in. I want Mike to come in and talk a lot about this, but the big thing that we've got here is a registered investment advisor has got a little more freedom to get into the private world as opposed to a certified financial planner. So a registered investment advisor can open up things like private offerings. They can do things that certified financial planners can't do. So Mike, do you want to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about RIAs and kind of maybe a little bit of what you do at TNT?
I could speak a little bit to it. I'm also a CFP too, John. Have been for quite some time, but want to make that clarification. But the RIA is really more or less a structure for someone who has a Series 65 or 66 license. Basically, you're licensed to give advice for a fee, whether it's investment management, whether it's just overall advice, period. So what I do typically is, in working with individuals, I bill out on an hourly basis or a flat fee to do research analysis, recommendations. Then there's implementation and monitoring. So all those steps are all included. So oftentimes people will come to me and say, hey, I have an opportunity to invest in this. What do you think about it? And that's oftentimes where I have to take a look at it and say, well, let's look at your situation. What are you trying to accomplish? So like you said, with a strategy, what's your strategy here? What are you trying to do here? What would you like to do? And then I look at it based on their situation, the risks involved, the benefits, lay out to them, you know, the pros and the cons. And as you mentioned earlier, John, yeah, there's no free lunch. There's obviously a great benefits to investing passively, but there's also some risks that people just have to be aware of, you know, and knowing your customer, knowing your client is crucial. So the RIA side of it does offer more freedom because of the structure itself, but it really depends upon that advisor, how they're aligned, and you know what their business model is and how they move forward with clients.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, do you have a few examples of what an RIA offers from an investment standpoint? Maybe some of the actual products that you know you can offer outside of what maybe a CFP can offer that's open to folks.
Well, the CFP basically, I mean, it's a credential, and that could be for any individual that goes through the course, passes the exam. That could be really with any institution. It could be someone who's with a very large company. It could be someone who's completely independent. It really depends upon, are they set up as fee only? Are they fee and commission? Are they commission based? Mm-hmm. So there's different ways that CFP, that a financial advisor who's a CFP can work. The RIA is another structure that they can work through, whether they have their own RIA or they're part of another RIA that might be a corporate RIA. So like from where I work, I have a corporate RIA where I have opportunities that I look at and utilize and review on behalf of clients. But in the private world, when we're looking at private investing, private real estate investing, it's structured a little bit differently. So it really depends upon the actual sponsor themselves and how are they structured. Is that sponsor structured to work with an RIA, or are they structured to work with someone who's registered strictly through FINRA, meaning they're done on a commission basis? So
Got it.
it really depends upon the structure and how that advisor or representative works.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. We'll go to our next person on the team, which you're probably asking, where has this person been? But yeah, having a good, strong CPA combined with a tax strategist type CPA is really important. You're gonna want to sit down with them, walk through what you're thinking of doing, because there's going to be different types of tax options and tax kind of reporting that you're going to want to be aware about, how to kind of just be prepared for it. Things like rental income that's paid to you quarterly, taxes income, how is that going to impact my adjusted gross income? Is that going to take me into another income bracket? How is depreciation going to be treated? That's a question you can ask the sponsor. Sometimes they use what's called accelerated depreciation. Most of them use straight line depreciation. But, if you get depreciation, which a lot of people like, and it's a huge tax benefit, but one of the kind of the other side of the double-edged sword is you've got to pay what's called recapture gain on the back end. So when that liquidation occurs on the back end and the project finishes, Uncle Sam's going to come back and is going to say, hey, I gave you all this depreciation loss for these years. Now you got to pay me back recapture gain. So that's something you want to be able to sit down and walk through with your CPA. Capital gains versus income. If anything goes over a year and it's a sale of an asset, most of the time it's long-term capital gains. Well, I think people like paying long-term capital gains more than income, but you may not. You may be okay with getting that rental check every quarter and paying it as income by having long-term capital gains. It just depends on what you're looking at, but it's definitely very important to sit down with your CPA, sit down with your enrolled agent, a federally licensed CPA, and just go through the different tax benefits, tax strategies, and so they're aware of what you're looking at doing. And if they can't answer those questions, or they can't give you the comfort, it may be time for you to go look for a CPA that can focus on those areas that are pertinent to specifically to passive real estate investing. Okay. And please stop me if you got questions. If you have anything in particular you want us to reiterate. I'm going to turn it over to our attorney who's available with us today, Dan Lyons, business attorney here in the Virginia area. Dan, you want to talk a little bit about how folks should think about the legality side, some of the things they need to think about when they're getting into passive real estate investing? Thanks.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, John. My name's Daniel Lyon. I'm a business attorney. I work with McCandless and Lillard and have my own law firm, Lyon Legal, offices in Fairfax and Leesburg, Virginia. And a lot of what I do is I help my clients make decisions related to their corporate issues, business transactions, and I also help them manage disputes and litigation. I did a lot of trial work early on in my career, but most of what I'm doing now is to help them with the decisions they're making through the business life cycle, from creation, entity selection, organizational, owner buy sells, operating agreements, operational issues, leases, bank loans, major contract negotiations, all the way through their exit planning and eventual sale of their business. And I have a lot of touch points with a lot of folks on the screen related to what I do. But I also started off as a CPA and left that early in my life to start practicing law and started a GovCon business, went through that, exited that. So I've had a fair amount of exposure to a lot of different things, but I never hold myself out as a securities lawyer. And part of what you're dealing with are securities issues. But at the same time, when we're looking at transactions like John's talking about in these passive investment scenarios, you're going to get investment documents that you have to understand. And you're going to need somebody if you don't understand, you're going to need somebody, whether it's your CPA, it's your CFP, or it's your lawyer, to come in and explain to you what in the world you're signing. You need to understand what it is. Sometimes it gets complicated. There are different pieces of it that I personally, as a lawyer and as your counsel, I'm going to want to negotiate for you. Those are things that, they pop up in a lot of different agreements. It doesn't matter if they're investment related or not, but there are going to be specific investment terms that are in these documents that you need to understand. And the discussion we've had so far touches on a lot of that. And Mike made the reference to liquidity, understanding whether or not you can get your money back, when you can get your money back, how long it's going to be tied up, what are the risks that are involved, and you need to understand all these things before you sign on the dotted line. There may be different questions that you all have about how you're going to hold title to your investments, and whether or not you're going to hold them individually with a spouse, joint tenants with rights of survivorship, whether or not you can hold them as tenants by entireties, whether you're going to run them through your trust, through self-directed IRAs. So those are different questions I can help you address and answer. Obviously, if you are getting involved with the creation of business entities and whether or not you're using those to invest in other passive investments, or you're creating your own business entities, the issues arise often related to situations where you have another owner. Whenever you get another owner involved in your business, you need to sit down and think about what each of you are going to do in the business, what your roles are. You have to go through this process of understanding ownership agreements, and in LLCs or operating agreements. We use LLCs a lot. There's been discussions about limited partnership. We can use an LLC and have it look like it's a general partnership and operate like a general partnership, like a limited partnership, like a corporation, like a subchapter S corporation. So at least in Virginia, we use LLCs a lot. You can pick just to check the box, pick your tax status. So, you're going to use just your CPA to help you go through that process and figure out what works best for you in this business and what's going to provide the most benefit. But you need to understand that upfront, whenever you bring in another partner, another business owner, you have to have that relationship clearly defined. You have to understand what the restrictions are going to be related to how decisions are made in the entity, whether or not there are going to be certain decisions that require unanimous consent, because you're not going to want one partner to bring in another partner and you don't have a say in it. So there's all sorts of unanimous consent requirements, whether or not you're going to enter into a loan, who has the ability and the right to do that. If you're in these limited partnership scenarios and you're buying into a limited partnership and you're in that situation, you have to understand that you don't have those rights. You're passive. You don't have the right to make management decisions and business decisions. That's up to your GP, and you really have to trust your GP to do the right thing. And you need to investigate and have a lot of discussions with them and make sure that you trust that person. So, those are some of the things that I look at and think about as going through this process. You do have to be a little bit concerned, at least to some extent, about whether or not you have any type of securities reporting under the Securities Act or Regulation D exemption issues, but it's sort of a side point unless you're actually the one creating these entities and setting up these passive investment entities and talking to other investors. Whenever you're talking to other investors and trying to pull people into an investment, you're at risk. So each state has its own blue sky laws, and some of them adopt all these Rule 506 and other Regulation D exemptions, and some of them don't. Virginia mirrors, I think for the most part, it mirrors the Regulation D exemptions, but there are some nuances to it. And anytime you're having a discussion with somebody from another state, now you've got the federal law involved, but you also have that state's blue sky law involved. So you need to be very, very careful about it. And when I'm dealing with business owners, often it's a smaller group. It's confined. I know who's involved, and we can identify the different laws that are going to apply, make sure the exemptions are under control. But as soon as you start opening up the discussion and bringing in other investors and people who aren't going to be as involved in running the operation, you have to be very, very careful about your exemptions.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that. So Dan has been doing this for quite a while. And of course, if you have questions for Dan, feel free to reach out. We'll have his contact information as well as Mike and Joel. But very important to make sure that you understand the legalities and the compliances when you're going through this. So thanks, Dan, for sharing that. Appreciate it. So let's say you may not necessarily have discretionary capital available, but you've got IRAs, 401ks, Roths that you want to utilize. There is a program called self-directed IRAs. And I think Joel's going to talk a little bit about that, but it's a really interesting way for you to move some of your capital around in your active investments on your retirement accounts and use those to invest in passive real estate investments. So I just liquidated some funds in my Roth and moved it into a self-directed IRA to invest. So there's some rules there, but Doug, we want to turn over to Joel to talk just for a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm excited to share the news with investors. I think this to me is like one of the single greatest secrets that flies under the radar for folks. That's an incredible opportunity. Personally, I think the passive off-market real estate have incredible returns because they are there's some advantages to being off-market. You get some great returns, and there are real estate, so they're non-correlated with the stock market. So Joel, if you would, Joel, can we go ahead and talk a little bit about the opportunities ranging from 401k, EQRP, and self-directed IRAs, and let's kind of talk about the differences in what they do and how they fit in the wealth management landscape, if you will.
For sure, yeah. Just a quick background about myself. I come from the banking and financial industry for over 15 years before I came into EQRP as an employee back in 2021. I spent a little bit of time working for a trust company where we serviced IRAs. So I got connected to EQRP through that work experience. And it's been an awesome journey because it's really unique. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes it unique. But to kick it off, I just want to say EQRP as a company, there's about 20 team members here located in Birmingham in our office, from Damian Lupo at the top, our founder, all the way down to our admin people. And we recognize ourselves as a financial services business because we do provide the self-directed or the solo 401k as the IRS recognizes it. We also do some safe harbors for small businesses, and we also have a couple of sister companies just right inside of this office. But where I think those who are interested in managing their own fund will find a lot of interest in EQRP is that we provide the 401k, and I'll talk a little bit about how that's important. But we also, I want to emphasize that we are heavy on the plan support once we establish the 401k for our members. And also we provide a lot of financial coaching and services. So we're not limited like most of our quote unquote competitors out there to just providing the plan. We go beyond that. And I think that's what sets us apart from others. I want to put emphasis on the fact that we offer and we emphasize the solo 401k versus the self-directed IRA because there's several reasons, but I would say the two upfront reasons are UBIT, which is Uniform Business Income Tax, that a self-directed IRA can trigger when invested in leveraged real estate. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. But the other is the contribution limits. A lot of our EQRP members are small business owners and their spouse is a small business owner. And when you look at the 401k contributions, both the elective deferral from the employee as well as the profit sharing portion, it's substantially greater than the contribution limits for an IRA. So a lot of people come to us because they want to max out on those 401k contributions to grow their retirement plan that ultimately they turn around and invest in real estate syndications or private placement and so forth. Just a few other points I wanted to mention, you guys. We love working and building partnerships with syndicators. I have a lot of syndicator relationships that have my cell phone number embedded in their cell phone, and they're constantly texting me. You know, it may be, hey, I got somebody, you know, Dr. So-and-so who is really interested in investing in my fund. He's got all of his capital tied up, but I know he just left an employer and he might have some 401k money available for rollover. I jump on that phone call, we start talking to that introduction, and lo and behold, this person had no idea they could take this 401k that they thought they had to roll into an IRA. They move it into an EQRP or a solo 401k. And within just a few days, that syndicator has a commitment from that doctor to invest $250,000 that they thought they were not able to commit. So it's been fun and exciting, but it certainly comes down to building those relationships with the syndicators or the fund managers. And that's what I want to be to anybody who's interested. I want to be in your back pocket for growing your commitments. I did touch on the fact that our solo 401ks, when the funds are invested in leveraged real estate, they are not subject to UBIT, which is that corporate tax rate on your gains that a lot of people have paid. And then they come to us afterwards and say, if I only knew. But also we have saved, and you can go on our website and look at a couple of testimonials. We have saved people literally thousands of dollars by doing an in-kind rollover prior to the sale of a deal. And we rolled that over in kind to the EQRP, did a little bit of paperwork, their fund sold, and all of those gains were tax-free. That is enormous. And that was set up for that member by the syndicator. So it added a tremendous amount of value, not only for us and for the member, but for that syndicator. And I can guarantee you that person is going to talk about how the syndicator and EQRP helped them out. And that word is just going to circulate. It's going to grow their business and so forth. Couple of final thoughts. We are quick to support people with their sign up, their rollover. We have a whole team dedicated upstairs that is highly qualified and knowledgeable. And they get the job done very quickly. They support members with PPMs, with subscription agreements, you name it. We speak the language. We know what's going on behind the scene. We can fill in gaps when needed. And last but not least, there's some small nuances that are special about the solo 401k. Just the fact that someone can borrow from their solo 401k, take a personal loan, is a huge advantage, so that they don't have to distribute early and potentially take a penalty and have a tax burden. But I just wanted to wrap it up that, you know, we're a lively bunch of people here. We love taking care of people, and we love educating them on things every day that they did not know was possible. And we're happy to have conversations all day long. We're happy to educate, support, and more importantly, we have a strong community. And when you become a member, you know, your people are taken care of. We introduce them to a bigger community that just creates more opportunity. So thank you.
Yeah, and Joel, I do want to a couple of questions, but first I want to suggest that EQRP, and part of why I'm so excited to partner with EQRP is the values that radiate from the company. So it's not just, hey, they're here to help you, but they align with the values and what we're trying to do. And so they are very serious about too. I mean, Parker radiates values. And so if you haven't met Parker Purcell, the CEO, really just to become a tremendous friend of mine and somebody I admire immensely. And so getting to questions, Joel, one of my favorite true and false questions, if you have a W-2 job and a side hustle, let's say you're building a real estate flipping business, you can only have your work 401k, true or false?
That is false. Yep, that is right. So, you know, that person might be contributing to their work 401k, which we would encourage them to, especially if they have profit sharing or matching. But at the same time, yeah, you can take some of that side business income and make contributions and have a 401k. It'll be your 401k would be sponsored by that small business.
that to me is a huge win. I think there's a misconception, and I shared it, that, oh, no, you can only have one 401k for some reason. That was in my mind, and that huge distinction in and of itself was just such an incredible awareness.
For sure.
Yeah, the
Guys,
only
any
thing,
other questions? Oh, go ahead, Michael.
yeah, I've got one. Yeah, they just have to make sure that they don't exceed the combined deferral limit aggregating both plans. That's the biggest thing. But yes, you can
Right.
have more than one. Absolutely.
Great point.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Joel, so much. You know, it's really a great resource to have if you want to get into doing passive real estate investing, but you could do it with other types of investments as well, not just in real estate, you know, so, but really good information. And again, you're just leveraging different types of investments in your retirement accounts and putting them into a self-directed where you can choose where you want to put some of those funds just to diversify, especially now with the markets, the volatility. So good stuff. Thanks, Joel. So, I mean, this one went a little long today only because we covered just some initial information. We're going to hopefully make these about 30 to 45 minutes in the future, but this was your team, you know, and we brought out some folks out today that could speak to the different areas that are important. So, you know, we're ready now for part 2, which we'll hopefully have in the next few weeks. So keep an eye out. And with that, we also want to just open the floor to anyone that has questions, provide some of our contact information for Dave and I at JID Investments, and Doug for him and his company, Enterprise. So you can see some of these projects on the bottom are some of the passive real estate investments that we're involved in. We've got one here in Frederick, Maryland, Magnolia House, a fantastic project, 180 apartments in a beautiful location, just right by the Fort Detrick and National Institute of Health. Rialto is our project in Washington, D.C., 70% stabilized. We've got some ground floor retail. Actually going to go out this Saturday to visit with some investors. Really excited about that one. And then this one here on the right, monster project in Atlanta, Midtown, overlooking downtown Atlanta. So we thought we'd throw up some of our projects for JID. This isn't a JID presentation. This is a passive real estate investment presentation, but obviously we're always happy to talk to you if you have questions about what we're doing and what Doug's doing. And with that, we'll open the floor for any questions from the chat, or if you want to jump on, please feel free. Let us know. Any questions? We'll say going once, going twice. All right. Well, Doug, I think this was great. I know we lost a few folks, but again, I think next one will be very interesting as we look at sponsors and we look at developers and we look at general partners and how to really kind of put your finger on who's best for you based on what you want to do in these investments.
Absolutely. And I want to thank our guests, Daniel, Michael, and Joel. You really added a huge dimension to what we're working on. It's one thing for us as syndicators to do it, but to show the passive investors what their team needs to look like outside of